Coming up on Arirang News. A negative COVID-19 test is now a must, not only for those coming in from mainland China, but will also be for those arriving from Hong Kong and Macau. Starting from Saturday, travelers from those regions should take a PCR or antigen test before boarding flights to South Korea. South Korean President Yoon says regulations on the property market should be eased more swiftly and drastically to prevent a hard landing. His remarks come during a progress report for the president given by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Following up was the Environment Ministry aiming to boost eco-friendly exports. To counter nuclear threats from the north, the U.S. is planning mock exercises with South Korea, but not as a joint nuclear exercise, which Seoul's presidential office has reconfirmed. Seoul and Washington are, however, looking to share information and jointly plan the operation of U.S. nuclear assets. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea, and thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Let's begin with our top story. A concerning number of people coming in from China have tested positive with COVID. All arrivals from China need to take mandatory PCR tests, but soon arrivals from Hong Kong and Macau will also need a negative test result before entry. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
Almost one-fifth of short-term visitors from China have tested positive for COVID-19. Starting from Monday, everyone coming in from China has had to get a PCR test on arrival. So Tuesday was the first day that the test results have come out, and 61 people out of 309 visitors have tested positive at Incheon Airport. So when new arrivals come here, authorities who are standing by the gates help guide incoming travelers from China to the PCR testing centers that are ready here at Incheon International Airport. And when these travelers do test positive, they'll have to quarantine at a temporary shelter near the airport so that their infections don't spread to local populations. Those who did test positive have to be quarantined for a week at a temporary shelter near the airport. The shelters can now hold up to 100 people, but airport authorities are scrambling to quickly expand the capacity. Health authorities are also expanding health vetting measures. From Thursday, visitors from China are going to have to take an extra PCR test before they enter Korea. And then from this Saturday, these health vetting measures will be expanded to visitors from Hong Kong and Macau. They will also have to get a PCR test to enter the country, but they won't need another PCR test upon arrival. Health authorities said they made this decision because they're concerned with the increase in cases and COVID-19 related deaths in Hong Kong and in other nearby countries. They also said that they have taken into account the decisions of other countries like the U.S. and Canada, who have also tightened border controls for incoming travelers from China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
President Yoon says he's motivated to fix the, quote, irrational wrongdoings within society and successfully reform the country's labor, education, and pensions. This came on Tuesday at his first cabinet meeting of the year and is also the third straight day he spoke of the three major reforms that the government is currently seeking. He also said 2023 is a year to deliver for the administration, saying he has asked each ministry to create concrete plans to carry out the reforms and to report the plans to the presidential office as they develop. Displayed for the members of the cabinet were the pictures sent from Danuri, South Korea's first lunar orbiter. Yoon also said that South Korea's own space agency will open soon, and in the near future, a Korean will land on the moon. Today, Korea's Land Ministry unveiled its ambitious plan for deregulation to stabilize the housing market. The Environment Ministry, meanwhile, reveals more on its plan to tackle climate change. Shin Ha-young has more details.
Regulations on the housing markets are going to be eased. In a briefing Tuesday, South Korea's Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced the lifting of regulations on a number of areas that were deemed relatively speculative. This comes as part of efforts to stabilize the housing market. However, the 3 districts in the Gangnam area, as well as Yongsan-gu district, still have those regulations in place. The ban on reselling will also be shortened to 1 to 3 years from the current 4 to 10 years. The ministry will also provide more financial aid for housing, especially for vulnerable groups. It will also create an app that provides information about Korea's unique system of jeonse, where the tenant gives the landlord a huge lump sum deposit instead of paying monthly rent. This can prevent tenants, especially young people, from becoming the victims of fraud. Meanwhile, the Environment Ministry designated 3 so-called green industries, namely those dealing with carbon neutrality, the circular economy, and water management. Also, it said it aims to raise exports in green industries for this year to 20 trillion Korean won, or roughly $16 billion, with the goal of reaching 100 trillion won, or roughly $78 billion. These include green hydrogen production facilities. To achieve the goal, the ministry will relax regulations and provide financial aid for R&D. It will also reform the water management system to reduce the risks posed by droughts and floods. In today's session, President Yoon spoke of the importance of addressing environmental issues with advanced technology.
그리고 무엇보다 우리가 이 환경, 깨끗한 환경이라는 이런 공공의 목표를 달성하기 위해서 규제보다는 친환경 기술을 개발해야 됩니다. 이걸 위해서 기술 개발, 산업 생태계, 시장 조성에 앞장서 주시기 바라겠습니다.
He also referred to nuclear power as a source of energy that contributes to carbon neutrality, urging the ministry to support the revival of the nuclear power plant ecosystem. 신하영, Arirang News.
Amid fierce global race in semiconductors, South Korea is allowing more tax incentives for chips and other strategic industries. For more on these new measures, here's our Shin Se-byuk.
South Korea plans to expand tax credits for firms investing in strategic industries like chips to a maximum of 25%. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho announced a tax code revision on Tuesday, saying there will be a higher tax credit rate for conglomerates investing in the chips industry.
The tax credit rate for conglomerates investing in chip facilities will be almost doubled from the current 8% to 15%.
For example, if Samsung Electronics invests $100 million in the semiconductor production facility this year, it will get a tax cut of $15 million. Also, for small and medium-sized companies, the credit will be raised sharply from the current 16% to 25%. Including the additional 10% tax credit to be applied for investment in strategic technology, conglomerates will be getting a tax cut of up to 25%, and small and medium companies will be getting up to 35%.
Including the current tax credit rates of 30 to 50% on R&D, South Korea is one of the world's top tax incentive providers.
Under the measures, companies in strategic industries, including those in the chip sector, are expected to enjoy tax cuts worth nearly $3 billion. Not only semiconductors, the government plans to reintroduce temporary tax credits for investment in all industries that have been temporarily suspended since 2011 to promote the economy. This year, a 3% tax cut will be provided for conglomerates investing in facilities and will be 12% for small and medium firms. The government is to set up a detailed revision within this month and send it to the National Assembly for approval in February the latest. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Foreign direct investment in South Korea hit a record high last year for the first time, surpassing $30 billion. According to data from the Trade Ministry, FDI came to $30.45 billion, up more than 3% from the previous record set in 2021. The number of FDI pledges grew more than 12% to over 3,400. By sector, manufacturing saw FDI pledges double to an all-time high of nearly 12 $12.5 billion. By country, investment from the United States soared by the most by over 65% to $8.7 billion, accounting for almost one-third of the total. The South Korean government is set to provide a Seollal holiday relief package that includes an increase in the supply of high-demand products as well as vouchers and coupons for grocery products. The measures were decided after the government and the ruling People Power Party met Tuesday to discuss a number of ways to ensure that people can enjoy the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday with fewer financial burdens. To promote shopping at traditional markets and mom-and-pop stores, the government will increase the availability of vouchers that can be used at those places. Also, electricity and gas discounts and vouchers will be given to those who are struggling to hit their homes. The government is also considering removing highway toll fees during the four-day holiday season. South Korea and the U.S. renew their commitment against North Korea's nuclear provocations, but both say they're not discussing joint nuclear exercises following remarks by President Biden that seem to contradict President Yoon's earlier ones. Choi Min-jung with more.
South Korea and the United States are planning for a range of scenarios to deter North Korea's use of nuclear weapons. A spokesperson for the U.S. National Security Council stated Tuesday that Washington is committed to providing extended deterrence and that the allies are working on an effective, coordinated response against the regime's provocations. The statement came after President Joe Biden said the U.S. is not discussing joint nuclear exercises with South Korea. This appeared to contradict earlier remarks made by South Korea's President Yoon, who, during an interview on Monday, implied the possibility of joint planning and exercises related to Washington's nuclear assets. A senior U.S. administration official reiterated Biden's statement that the two nations aren't discussing joint nuclear exercises because South Korea is not a nuclear power. Yoon's press secretary Kim Eun-hae also explained that Biden had no choice but to say no because joint nuclear exercises can only be held between nuclear weapon states. Kim also confirmed that South Korea and the U.S. are discussing information sharing, joint planning, and implementation plans in relation to the operation of U.S. nuclear assets to respond to North Korea's nuclear weapons. The U.S. senior official also addressed that efforts will be made to enhance information sharing and planning, as well as an eventual tabletop exercise. After meeting in Cambodia in November, both Yoon and Biden have asked their teams to find ways to address North Korea's recent provocations, which have caused increasing concerns. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
It looks like preparations are underway in North Korea for a large-scale military parade in the coming days. Voice of America reported Tuesday that signs of preparations for a parade have been spotted by satellites at Pyongyang's Medium Parade training ground. The images show as many as 3,500 people having gathered there, with an evident rise in the number of military vehicles parked in the area. Pundits speculate that the regime could hold the parade as early as January 8th, the birth date of the North's current leader Kim Jong-un, or on February 8th, which marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Korean People's Army. South Korea's Unification Ministry says it's keeping close tabs on movements in the area and on the timing of the parade, together with the United States. Relations with North Korea are not off to a peaceful start in 2023. Following an unprecedented number of missile tests last year, North Korea launched another ballistic missile on New Year's Day. Bae Eun-ji has more on North Korea's policy in the new year and the direction of inter-Korean relations.
Many experts on North Korea say that heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula will remain throughout this year, as the regime will not be changing its hardline policy against South Korea and the U.S. The North first set this policy in December 2019, few months after the Hanoi summit with the U.S. ended in failure.
There is no sign that North Korea has changed its policy direction. So I think this year, 2023, North Korea is continuing to conduct their nuclear and missile tests, including 7th nuclear test.
Speaking on New Year's Eve, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un called for an exponential increase in his regime's nuclear weapons arsenal, calling South Korea an undoubted enemy. He also ordered the development of a new ICBM, which appears to show the regime's efforts to create one using solid fuel.
Unlike liquid fuel, solid fuel missiles do not require a complicated piping and pumping process to feed their engines, allowing them to be launched quickly. Also, because they don't need separate troops to pump fuel, they can enhance the operational effectiveness of the military.
As for the ICBMs they already have, Kim Jong-un's influential sister Kim Yo-jong even hinted at the possibility of test firing its ICBM at a normal launch angle instead of a steep one, which would allow the missile to fly at a normal trajectory. By April, the North plans to complete preparations for its first military reconnaissance satellite. Although it's up to the determination of the North Korean leadership, it's likely that the regime will speed up its weapons development this year instead of choosing to return to talks. 배은지, Arirang News.
And to the ongoing war in Ukraine, a missile strike launched by Ukraine kills dozens of Russian soldiers in the eastern Donetsk region, according to Moscow. Ukrainian authorities meanwhile say the attack killed at least 400 Russian troops. Cho Sung-min has more.
Russia's defense ministry says 63 of its troops stationed in the eastern Donetsk region were killed in a missile strike by Ukraine on Sunday. It added 300 others were injured. It is one of the deadliest single attacks suffered by Moscow during this war. Moscow says the attack, consisting of 6 U.S.-made HIMARS rockets, targeted a building housing Russian troops. A defense ministry spokesperson said 2 out of the 6 rockets were intercepted and destroyed by Russia's missile defense system.
As a result of the strike by 4 rockets with high explosive warheads against a temporary deployment point, 63 Russian servicemen were killed. All necessary assistance and support will be provided to the relatives and friends of the servicemen who have been killed.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military claimed on Monday that it believes nearly 400 Russian soldiers were killed and 300 were injured in the attack. It didn't directly acknowledge its role in the strike. The leadership in Kiev reiterated that Moscow plans to continue bombardments of Ukraine's energy infrastructure to wear down its resistance.
We have information that Russia is planning a protracted attack using Shahid drones. It is probably banking on exhaustion, exhausting our people, our anti-aircraft defenses, our energy. But we act and do everything so that the terrorists fall in their aim, as all their others have failed.
The Shahid drones refer to Iranian-made drones that Russia has been using in its offensives. Iran has previously denied that it had supplied Russia with military weapons. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
The official lying-in state of former Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI began ahead of his funeral on Thursday. The first day saw tens of thousands of mourners visit St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican to pay their final respects. Song Yoo-jin has this story.
Tens of thousands of people filled St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican on Monday to pay tribute to former Pope Benedict XVI, who passed away at the age of 95 on New Year's Eve. His body was moved from his residence to the Basilica on Monday morning. Just after 9 a.m., doors swung open, allowing the public to enter and say their last goodbyes. Despite tight security, mourners continuously streamed in.
I think it's once in a lifetime experience, firsthand, seeing, the Pope now late, being put in the St. Peter's Basilica. It's a beautiful experience.
We took the bus and we have been waiting for quite a long time to see Pope Benedict. I want to say goodbye to him. He's a German Pope and I am from Germany, and I am here to express my gratitude and love, and I want to pray for him and to see him.
The Vatican police say around 65,000 people visited the site on Monday alone. Among them were Italian President Sergio Mattarella and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The body of the Pope Emeritus will lay in state for 3 days until Wednesday. The Holy See press office says the funeral mass will take place in St. Peter's Square on Thursday morning. And for the first time in more than 600 years, the funeral of a former pope will be presided over by the current pontiff. His body will be buried according to his wishes in the crypt under St. Peter's Basilica. Elected in 2005, Benedict was the first German pope in 1,000 years. He also became the first pope in more than 600 years to resign. After stepping away from the job in 2013, he lived the remainder of his life behind Vatican City walls. 송유진, Arirang News.
Jisoo, a member of the hit Korean girl group Blackpink, launched her own YouTube channel early Tuesday. Named Happy Jisoo 103%, it reached 1 million subscribers in just 10 hours. The first video shows her day in London, which is where the group held 2 sold-out concerts late last year. The clip ends with a message saying that all profit coming from the channel will be donated. All 4 Blackpink members now have their personal YouTube accounts. Drinking trends in South Korea changed during the COVID-19 pandemic, which has resulted in increased demand for locally distilled soju over varieties that use imported ingredients. This change is good news for the country's traditional distilleries, while farmers are also expected to benefit from the use of local agricultural goods. Yoon reports.
Among the changes brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic is a preference for liquor among young people who were forced to drink at home because of lockdowns, as well as increases in demand for higher quality distilled spirits. That trend moved the Rural Development Administration to apply their own technology for the production of traditional distilled liquor using local rice from Gyeonggi-do Province, traditional yeast, and local raspberries. This distilled liquor is expensive due to a specific and difficult process that requires more time and labor.
We use local ingredients from right here in Yeoju. Using our rice and raspberries allows us to produce liquor that is more familiar and approachable.
This distillery also incorporates traditional medicinal herbs into its rice-based distilled drinks. And it uses yeast and fermentation technology developed by the Rural Development Administration that allows for a lower alcohol percentage content, making the spirits more suitable for younger drinkers.
The biggest advantage of raw rice fermentation is that we can make the alcohol in a very short period. The quality is almost the same as the traditional method, and cheaper.
Currently, almost all domestic soju is diluted using imported agricultural products and liquors. Meanwhile, traditionally distilled soju only makes up 0.5% of the entire soju market. But with the recent rise in popularity, authorities have started to support the manufacturing process in distilleries using local agricultural products.
Using local agricultural products promotes local economies, and people may be attracted to areas where the distilleries are located.
The Rural Development Administration sees that if the traditional distilling of soju can produce 10% of the liquor made by the dilution method, up to 36,000 tons of local rice would be used annually, which has led to their focus on the development of related technology. 이은진, Arirang News.
Frigid spells will continue to sweep across the nation tomorrow. Most inland regions will see morning temperatures in the minus range, while Seoul will be ice cold at -6 degrees. Other regions such as Paju and Cheoron will be much colder. Under such extreme cold, frostbites could happen, so make sure to refrain from outdoor activities. In the meantime, dry conditions are persisting across the East Coast. For the coastlines of Gangwon-do Province, conditions are especially dry with warnings in place. They will be accompanied at times by gusty winds, and this could increase the risk of wildfires. Please be careful with anything that can start a fire. In most regions, we'll see minus figures for the morning hours. Chuncheon will be very cold at -12 degrees. Highs in Seoul will get up to 1 degree, Gwangju 7, Busan will be reaching 9 degrees Celsius. And cold wave conditions will last until Thursday. Central regions will see a mix of rain and snowfall this Friday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
This is where we wrap up our newscast. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest stories in South Korea and worldwide. Take care.
A reclusive country, a small country on the map of the world, the land of morning calm, the country that had once been lost,